Action. Nice. Bart, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you, Chris.
It's been an interesting week for both of us, and there's a lot I want to chat about. I was actually very excited when we decided to start doing this podcast. You were one of the guys that I really wanted to get on here, because I think we could probably do 10 episodes with you and still have plenty to talk about. But obviously, given what we've just been through, what I really want to talk to you about is the Yukon River Quest. Okay. So maybe you can tell us what the hell we just did.
Yeah, like we've talked about a little bit before already. It's hard to explain, but we're going to try. It's a race. It's a challenge. It's a quest. It's a race against yourself, against other racers. It's a race against other craft. And most of all, it's just a big endurance challenge, which is mostly hard on your body. So you're gonna have a lot of places. You're gonna have a lot of times that you're gonna meet yourself, and it's gonna be very hard. And it's a long pedal. It's 715 kilometers. And,
it's insane.
Yes, it's weird that we've pedaled a lot of places together already, and we used to think that a 10K race was long, and then we went to 11th City, which was 220, and that was in the beginning. That was the biggest you could find in 5 days, so for 45K a day, and we thought that was hard, and most people still think that that's kind of tough. And now suddenly we're doing 715 kilometers. We have some current, which helps, but still it's about 50, 60, 80 hours of pedaling.
For some of us, it was quite a long way. For others, it was a little bit quicker.
Yes.
You got your fourth title. Congratulations.
Thank you.
56 hours. It was a bit slow this year. You were 3 hours outside your record.
Yes.
I was 21 minutes inside the cutoff time.
Yeah. I
finished in 71 hours. But it's really, like you said, it's difficult to describe this race, because for me, this isn't even a race. People are racing, you get times, you get positions, there's winners, but it just goes so far beyond what people consider a race. Okay. And I thought it was funny you bring up, in the beginning we thought 11 cities was like the holy grail. You can't go any longer, surely. I was out there on the final day of this race, and I knew there was something like 90 kilometers to go. I was like, oh, we're almost there. Like, it's so close, 90 kilometers.
And I've told you in the past that the last 12 hours is like home stretch.
Yeah. I thought that was a joke when you said it, but when I experienced it, I was like, we're really almost there.
Yes.
Everything's relative.
Yes.
Suddenly that is literally the home stretch. And
the strange thing is, for me, I could do a short race, 10K, and I still think the last 3 kilometers, like, oh, this is going to be, it's tough, and it's the last 3 kilometers, and it's home stretch. And the same, a couple of months later, you're doing this race, and then it's suddenly not 3 kilometers anymore. It's the last 90 kilometers, which are the last part of the race, and equally mentally, like, this is the last part. So yeah, it's interesting. You learn a lot about what's possible with yourself, and you learn a lot about food and efficiency and
sleep deprivation,
clothing, and there's just so much little elements which make this race or your goal successful or not. And that's why also about 25 to 30% every year won't make the race, won't make the cutoffs,
a lot didn't make it this year.
Yes.
It was 86 teams finished. I know that because I was the 86th team to finish, literally the very last over the line. So I think 38 teams didn't make it, and some of them didn't even make it past the lake, which is essentially the first challenge. But for those that have never followed this race, like, essentially it's 700 kilometers, 715 kilometers, 444 miles. We do it over 3.5 days. There's a couple of rest stops that are mandatory. The first one after something like 280, 300 kilometers. And then there's another one towards the end, just a few hours. But the first rest stop is basically the goal, right? Because you get to sleep. You almost have a normal night's sleep, that first rest.
Yes, it's a 7-hour sleep. It's 7-hour rest. You don't get to sleep the 7 hours. You need some time to wind down, and during the winding down you eat some. And I always take a quick shower, and
yeah, I did that. That was magic.
Yes, it is. I'm not normally I don't love. It's not like a big thing for me, but sometimes it's just great. And after the race too, it's just like, oh, this is nice. But that takes about 40 minutes, and then you try to sleep as much as you can, and then I do an hour before the race. I wake up again, which is quite long, but I've done shorter, and I like the hour because it's no stress.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice to start the race after again with no stress.
And going back before that, this race has a pretty insane start.
Yeah.
Because it's a 3-day race. It's 700 kilometers.
Yeah.
It's up to 71 hours. Yet the very first minute is a running race sprint along grass and gravel down to the water's edge where you jump on your boarder and your canoe.
They say about 400 meters. It's something like that. The race director tells you, you're not going to win the race here and there. Don't run.
But we all try.
But we all try. And I don't agree totally. Because
you think you can make a significant difference in the first?
Yes. And the guy who helped me, Kalen Pellet, my support, I tried to explain him this. For me, it's important to start. So he was going to take it easy, and he was going to film. And I said, if you want to help, it doesn't work. I cannot film and help me at the same time.
Yeah.
So I explained him why. For me, it's the start. If you're already behind at the start, mentally, the one behind you already, that person is already lost something. So, and if you already have to, get to that other person to be on a still, is such a long race. It's hard. So I told him I want to be the first out of on the water, and if I have 5 board lengths, I know that makes a huge difference. And
you broke the rest of the suppers literally in the first couple of minutes.
Yes, and it was maybe not because of it, but it could be.
Yeah.
But I know, with one of the paddlers, it did make a big difference because and when they see you go and they have a distance, and then I know in my races that there were times that you think, oh, just let him go already. I'm not going to even try.
Yeah.
If you ride on the tail, you have this like, oh, I want to stay on his tail, and I'm going to try as hard as I can. I've been 11 cities for days behind the same person or the other way around doing that. So it is the small things which make or we win a race, and even in a race like this long, it's important.
Well, I thought it was very interesting, and for me personally, like I've always been a very good runner in short distances. I think I actually couldn't even make it the full 400 meters. I stopped about 50 meters before my board and started getting out of breath. But I thought it was really interesting because I knew I shouldn't do it. I shouldn't sprint at the start. But on the start line, there's about 400 people in the race. There's 125 teams. A lot of them are 3-man, 4-man, 6-man. So there's about 400 paddlers on the start.
Right.
We all have to run down to the water's edge. And I knew it was like my one shot at glory. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sprint. The hell with it. Yeah. So I think I was like, I'm just going to win the running race. I didn't. I think I was like 4th to the beach area.
Okay.
I was like, I'll take that. So I went from 4th to last in the space of 3 days. But I thought that was an interesting element. And then once you're on the water, it just becomes this, it's not a normal race, obviously, but there's so much strategy in it. Like it becomes almost this orienteering race. You've got this famous map, the Rourke map, which becomes a character, like it becomes your best friend.
Yes.
And every page, like you said, is about 10 to 15 kilometers, about an hour of paddling, and you're just staring at this map for 3 days, reading the islands, trying to read the current. Because the key to this race is not so much endurance, that's obviously a huge part, the food, everything, like there's all elements, but one of the biggest things is reading the current of the river.
Yeah, the current and reading the map right, that you don't make mistakes. So the current, the first year I came here, I hadn't done much river races. And so I had to learn quick. And luckily you learn quick because in the beginning there's other races with you. There's other either stand-up paddlers or kayaks or canoes. And that's why you see, if I stay on the outside, totally on the outside, I'm actually slower than the one a little bit inside of me, although I was a faster paddler at that moment. So you learn quick, and somewhere halfway the race you think you figured it out, which is not true, but you got it mostly figured out. And from then on it's just then the map starts to be a little more difficult, and there's more islands, and then it's about reading the map right and making no mistakes.
Yeah, I think it took me until about the final day until I figured out that river. You're always like looking for shortcuts in the river, because you can literally be on one side of the river and you'd be going at maybe 9 kilometers an hour. There'll be another guy on the other side of the river going 15 kilometers an hour.
Yes.
Like they literally fly past you.
Yes.
And you look over and you're like, oh, I've just wasted 10 minutes being on this side.
And it looks like a train when they do this, because the background moves really quick behind them, and I know the feeling, but it's also at the same time really great to see.
Yeah.
I had in the last 5 hours before the finish a canoe team which was obviously a lot faster than me, and they said, Bart, we'll see you at the finish. We talked a little bit and they said, we'll see you at the finish. And I said goodbye, and then a little island showed up. There was just a tiny island that you could go left and right. And I could see, I have a better overview point than the canoes because I'm higher. I could see there was just, the water is different. It's a little, you see a little chop, and it just looked different. You could see the water was moving, it's not good. So they went left, I went right. And then it took them 20 minutes, although it was not far. 20 minutes to catch up again, and they're like, hey, it's you again. So that's why I think it's an interesting race. If it was a straight canal race with 750 kilometers, it would be boring and way harder. But you have to look at the water, you have to look at the map. Yeah. And of course there's a lot of time on your mind too, but there's always something to do.
And we had a relatively tough year this year.
Yes.
The weather was nice. It was always usually sunny. It wasn't. There was one cold night, which I want to chat about, but it never really rained. There was one rain squall, that was about it. But what we had was pretty much every afternoon we had hours and hours of a headwind.
Yes.
And for us on the sups, that was kind of demoralizing.
Yeah, unfortunately here the wind is either from the back or from the front. And the way we are going is east-northeast. And somehow here I have the feeling after 4 years of paddling here that if it warms up, the wind is east-northeast or somewhere there, and then it's just always headwind. And the wind turns with the river.
It follows the river. I had one headwind straight. I'm like, I know there's a corner up ahead. It's like 90 degrees. We're going to be out of it. It might even be downwind. We turn, it's pure headwind again.
Yes.
It's this magic wind that follows the river.
Yes. No, it's
like it's a 700 kilometer wind tunnel.
Yes. Yes, having said it, it's always against you, but luckily there's two things. One thing is that sometimes you come to a corner and suddenly the wind is different. It's either lighter or stronger, could be, but it changes a lot. So it's not always, you're not always hammering the same strength. So there's always this possibility, next corner we'll see what happens, which keeps you mentally a little bit like, okay. And the other thing is, even if you have a lot of headwind, as long as you keep the nose of the board in the wind, the board is still moving because of the current.
Yeah.
And which on a normal flat water, no current place, that won't happen. So that's motivating too. And we had wind on the lake with a lot of chop, and in the beginning was side wind, so it was not funny.
That killed a lot of teams.
Yes.
I thought my race was over after 4 hours.
Yes.
I was like, this documentary we're making is going to be pretty boring. I lasted 4 hours. We could just put the GoPro on, he's finished.
Yes.
But it was going so well as well. We hit the lake, there's the dreaded lake, Lake Laberge. It's 50 kilometers long. You hit it after about 3 hours, and then the water goes dead still. So you're paddling flat water for 50 kilometers. And you kept saying, if you make the lake, you make the race. So
yes.
For myself, a lot of us, we were just trying to get past the lake. And it started so well. I was drafting a 2-man canoe. It was dead flat. I even joked with the canoe about how I'd heard this was a tough lake, but this is easy. We're going to cruise across. Not 5 minutes later, we're getting hit by like 30-knot headwind.
It came out of nowhere. You didn't even see like a dark cloud. There was some clouds, but it was not obvious. So I was surprised that it just came along. And then I was with a kayak, a 2-man kayak. They're normally pretty fast, but they had a very consistent speed, which was nice. And I said, I'm gonna stay with you guys for another hour, and then I'm just gonna cruise by myself. And then 5 minutes later, this wind picked up, and the kayak, they slowed down a little bit, but they, compared to me, they sped off, and I couldn't see them within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was struggling big time, and around me, the canoes, some of the bigger canoes especially, because they dug into the chop and they got full of water. Some had to go to the side to get the water out.
One flipped over.
One flipped
the
over.
big Voyager.
Yes. So it was, and luckily it was not long. It was a couple hours. And most of us somehow got through it. And
well, you were one of the only subs that stayed on the water. I think you and Peter stayed on the water. The other, I think there was 11 of us. The rest of us all got off the water. Like I was going at about 1 kilometer an hour, and I was using all my energy to do that. And I thought, this is pointless. I'm hardly moving and I'm destroying myself.
Yeah.
So I just pulled off to the side, which was pretty easy because the wind was pushing me off anyway. I hid in the woods, waiting for a bear to eat me in the rain. Like put all my rain jacket stuff on. And I just sat there for 20 minutes. I sat there and I was like, if this goes any longer, I'm screwed because we won't make the cutoff at the end of the lake.
No.
Unfortunately, the wind started dying after about half an hour, and then we still had all the chop from 50 kilometers of lake that was catching up.
It took a long time.
That was another couple of hours to just the remnants coming through. But at least it wasn't the wind, so you could just punch through it. So we got through that, and then halfway across the lake, the wind turned around, and we actually had a little mini downwind.
But a mini down, yes, it was kind of like, this is nice. It wasn't so bad after all. Even during that time, you already forget how quickly that something was hard, and the last couple hours was nice. So you get to the other side of the lake and you can start the river. So, yeah, but it was hard. But yeah, for me, I tried to make a difference there. When I got the wind, and it was still, I thought, okay, I'm still moving. I'm still going 5 or 6 kilometers an hour. And I thought, here I can make a difference if I keep going. And I train a lot in the wind, so. And I know a lot of people pedal a lot, but they pedal in mostly nice conditions, because if it's bad, they think like, we'll go tomorrow. Yeah. But I think it's important to train all conditions, because the race is not as particularly the race is the race day, and they're not going to change the weather on that day, so you have to race on that day. So I pushed hard, and I kept going, and then it turned out okay. Yeah, you mentioned training. I want to touch on that in a little bit, because it'd be interesting to contrast our two training preparations. Yes, it would be from one extreme literally to the other. But past the lake, we finally got there. The cutoff was 1 a.m. Thursday morning. We started this race at midday Wednesday. So we had 13 hours to go through the first part of the river, which is about 3 hours, and essentially 10 hours to cross the lake. Yeah. So we had to get by 1 a.m. to the finish. So we had 13 hours. And 13 hours straight paddling is an insane thing to do. It's a lot of paddling. Yes, this is just the start. That's literally just the first leg. Yeah. And once you got there, you don't stop. You keep going for another good, well, depending on who you are. Like, once I got to the lake, I still had 21 hours of straight paddling in front of me. Yes, but mentally... But they made a big difference getting there. Because once you get there, suddenly you see the rocks flying underneath of you. I literally, I always want to say like, I'm flying now. Because you go so much faster suddenly. And mentally, if you get a push, that's just different. It's still the same amount of work. I think most paddlers actually, me too, slows down a little bit. Because you think like, now the current's helping me, so now I can slow down a little bit. Whatever I do, I'm still moving. And then, you have to keep going for a long time. I got there like at around 10 o'clock, so 3 hours before cutoff, which is normally an hour later than I planned to. And then, for me, the hard thing that night is mostly the night. It's somewhere between 2 and 6, you get sleepy time. And it was cold this year. It was very cold. First night was freezing. Yes. It was. Yeah. It must have got close to 0. Yes, that's what I've been told. Yes. And I closed lightly. I just had the same stuff on as the day before, during the day, but I put a rain jacket on, and did it all night. In hindsight, you can hear my voice now. I got a little bit of something in my throat right there. And not during paddling, but during the moment you sit down to grab some food. In those, mostly it was not long because it was cold. Those few minutes you sit down to grab something, you get a chill real quick, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
You try to go as fast as possible to get on, and often I did a different stroke rate just to get warm. Normally I'd like to do a long stroke, and then you just did like tuk 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 tuk, just to get warmer.
Yeah.
And
well, a lot of people got hypothermia that first night. There's several people retired with hypothermia.
Yeah, the biggest mistake people make here is not doing right away. When something is wrong, they don't. They think like they have goals. They're like, I eat every hour, or I drink every hour, or when I get there, I do this. And it doesn't work this way. Here, if it gets cold,
you got to adapt.
You have to do it right away.
Yeah.
If you think you're thirsty, you stop right away and you drink, or you drink right. And yeah, you don't wait, because in a normal race, if you wait a little bit and you're a little more thirsty in the end, it doesn't matter. But here, if you haven't drunken enough and you still have 40, 50 hours to go, it will break you up. There's always people here. And the funny thing is that the hyperthermia and heat exhaustion happens in the same 24 hours with people. Some people, they overheated and they stop racing, and then a couple hours later they're too cold and they have to stop racing because they're so, yeah. It's
a roller coaster, this race.
Yes.
I know. I think I was relatively close to hypothermia. I got to it was about 3 a.m. and they keep saying this is the race to the midnight sun, so I figured, the sun's got to be, it's like, it's 3 a.m, it must be up already.
It's to the midnight sun, right? Later.
Yeah. I figured the sun's got to be coming up. It's 3 a.m. And the sunrise, I think, around here is like, 2:45. But what I didn't factor in is that we got these giant mountains all around us that are just like this fortress walls blocking out the sun until about 6 a.m. So I kept waiting for the sun because I was getting cold. Like I could feel I was really getting cold at about 2, 3 a.m. I thought the sun's going to come up, I'll be fine. And it got to about 3:30 and I was like, I know it's daylight and the sun is nowhere to be seen. It just must be stuck behind the mountains. And like, if it's stuck for another hour, I'm in trouble. So I was coming up to a checkpoint where you just got to yell out your number and keep paddling. You don't have to stop. But as I was approaching it, I could see there was a campfire. And I was like, I can't feel my feet. The rest of my body's getting cold. Like maybe just stop for 5 minutes and warm up your feet.
Yeah.
So I pulled in. I was like, I just got to sit here for a bit. And then, yeah, of course. Within like 2 minutes, my whole body was going numb. Like I cooled down so quick when I stopped paddling.
Yes.
And so for the next hour, I was trying to warm up my whole body, let alone my feet. I was pouring hot tea onto my booties to try and like feel my toes again. There was this French guy next to me that had rolled his one-man kayak, and he was sitting there shivering, and he said, I've been here 2 hours, and he was still shivering. Another guy came in a two-man. One of the guys was totally fine. They hadn't flipped or anything. One guy was totally fine. The other guy was shaking uncontrollably, like clearly getting hypothermic. We gave him a hot chocolate and he couldn't even like hold it. He was just shaking out of control. This is about 4 a.m. on like the second day.
Yes.
So we're still only 16 hours into a 70-hour race. And I was thinking like, if I can't warm up, then I can't keep going.
Right.
This is over.
Yes.
It's going to be another sad end to the movie.
Yeah.
But after about an hour, I was like, all right, I'm warm enough. Just tough it up and keep going.
Yeah. It's all, everything is serious. Everything has consequences in the race.
Yeah.
Which, if you come from other races, it's not like that. You can make a lot of mistakes and it doesn't matter too much. I mean, you're not gonna win, you're gonna be 10th or last, but here, yes, it's actually serious. That's why the gear check and the briefing, it's quite serious. And there were a lot of things actually in the briefing which most people take for granted, but the guy said, remember, it might be night then, but it's cold between 3 and 6.
Yeah.
And somehow it stuck in my head, and every night I thought like, the guy was right. It's cold between 3 and 6. And yeah, so it's all the small elements which make this an interesting race.
I actually failed my gear check.
Yes, a couple times.
Twice. On the more like 5 minutes before the race, I was still failing. Stu, our local legend guide here, Stu Knack, he had to go and get me a rain jacket. Because I bought some cheap thing from Walmart that clearly didn't pass.
Yeah, you did it the way most people don't do it. Most people work towards this race a year, or at least a half or 7 months or something. And they prepare and they train and they train, and so it's a very different. You were mentally more prepared because we've talked about it often, so you knew a little bit. But all the other parts, it was a bit less.
I borrowed everything.
Yes.
And yeah, I literally failed the gear check twice, and I was getting annoyed at the lady because she's like, "This isn't a rain jacket." And I was like, "I'll be fine. Like, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." And like when it started raining on the lake, and then at 4 a.m. when I was borderline hypothermia, I was like, "Thank God she made me find someone that had a better rain jacket, or I never would have lasted with that crappy little jacket I bought."
Yes.
So it's a huge thing, and the gear check is insane here. There's so many pieces of mandatory gear. We have to carry on our boards an emergency tent, emergency sleeping bag. I failed the sleeping bag. I pulled it out, and she's like, I was like, here's my sleeping bag. And she's like, what's the temperature? I was like, like -20 or something. She's like, show me. She's like, it says +7. I was like, it's not gonna be that cold. And she's like, it's gotta be at least -5 or you can't pass it. I was like, God, you gotta be kidding. So I had to go and get like a thermal liner for it, which in the end I used on the Coffee Creek stop on this third night. So again, I was grateful that she forced me to fix my crap. But it's amazing. You gotta have this fire like starting kit.
Yeah.
You gotta have waterproof matches. You gotta have all this full medical kit where they go into minute detail about how many gauze pads and bandages you have.
Yes.
It's quite incredible, the safety gear. And we carry all this on our board. Like boards we couldn't pick up our boards at the start.
No.
Like we got to have our boards waiting in the water for us with a helper.
Yes.
And thanks to Chris from Calgary that we met, one of the volunteers, he was like, okay, I'll wait for you in the water. Because I was like, I picked it up 5 minutes before the start. I was like, I can't lift my board. How am I going to get in the water?
Yes, I was there.
So that's another interesting element of this race, that just all that gear you got to take with you. And then, of course, is your water and your food.
Yes.
Which is a whole strategic thing. How much water you take, when you drink it, because like you said, if you get dehydrated, it's too late.
Yeah.
Like if you start feeling thirsty, it's pretty much too late. So you got to drink even when you don't want to drink. You got to eat when you don't want to eat. And the kind of food you bring, and we've had a lot of talks and debates about what food is appropriate. But there's very few races where you have to think, okay, what food I bring could be the difference between not just winning and losing, but finishing and not finishing.
Yeah, I think every race over 1.5, 2 hours it starts, but it's not as important. I used to think for me it started with 11CD. I started thinking more and more about it. And there I felt it made a difference, what I ate and when I ate it. And there I made it a point, everybody in my group, that we take a food break together and not one is sprinting off and I put a banana in my mouth. But here, yes, it's the drinking is easy for me. I just drink quite a lot, and as long as you pee a lot, you drink enough. The food is harder because you don't want to eat 24 hours a day, every hour food.
It becomes work.
It's what it is, yes.
Just eating. Yes. I had a bag of M&Ms, several bags of M&Ms. It's like peanut M&Ms are the best thing in the world for me. At the end of the race, I was like, if I didn't see another fucking peanut M&M, I'm gonna just throw it over. Like I couldn't eat. Yeah. Food that I would normally crave, I didn't want to look at. Just because when you're sleep deprived, when you're exhausted, when you're still physically exerting yourself, food and chewing is like, it's the last thing you want to do. Yeah. So you basically have to force yourself to eat, which is a very strange concept.
Yeah, so the thing I do to make it easier is variety. I've seen so many people who bring that, they think like, oh, this bar is the best because it's healthy and it has so much energy and it's perfect. And I like it too, it tastes nice.
Yeah, it tastes nice on the first day.
Yes, that always changes. No matter what you take, you can take the best food, the nicest tasting. It won't taste always the same after a while. Yeah. So you need different stuff, and every year I bring more variety. Yeah. And this year I was finally satisfied with what amount of variety I had. Yeah. And it's especially for me. I always was on the sweet side. Energy, and this year I went more towards salty stuff. So I changed my food a little bit more to hearty food.
Yeah. My theory on that is liquid food, and we had a lot of debates about this.
We agree, but.
I think for me, I'm a little bit weird with my food in general. I like to live off a liquid diet, but for me, in the end, like I don't like chewing any time. But in a race, chewing was driving me crazy. Even chocolates and nuts that I like. So I took my liquid food with me, and by the end, it was the only thing I liked. and I finished it before the last day. On the last day, I barely ate. Like I was way under my calories that I should have taken. I wasn't drinking enough water.
No.
And I just kind of cracked the shits with my food and said, I don't want any of this. Like I don't want to eat.
No, so you can only do that thinking if you're close to the finish. Because otherwise you don't die, but you die.
Yeah. This was the last 12, 14 hours, and I limped to the finish.
Yes.
Like I did not paddle to the finish.
Energy goes.
I basically drifted to the finish.
Yes.
I was just tapping my paddle. But I think next year, maybe if I ever come back, I would actually just bring liquid food. I know you talk about variety and that I'll go crazy if I have one thing, but for me, just not having to think about eating would be
you're a big exception. There's some people who do it. I think the combination is for most people, but it's very individual. For everybody, it's different. What works for me is not the same for somebody else.
And that's why this race is interesting, because you've got to figure out like what food you bring for yourself. There's no one size fits all.
No.
It's not like, all right, I'll just go on like Michael Booth's training program and he'll tell me what to eat or something. You've got to figure out your food.
Yes.
And really, you're not going to figure it out until you've already done the race.
Yes.
Like you'll know for the second time what you should have bought the first time.
Yes.
Because how can you possibly prepare for this?
No, doing shorter races helped. Like 11 city kind of style races, you learn a lot, but
there's even in that, like the first day I paddled for 34 hours straight. There's really, maybe if you do 11 cities non-stop, you'd get close to that, but you wouldn't have to keep going after that. There's really no other races except maybe, there's a couple of ultras out there, but there's virtually nothing where you're paddling for more than a day non-stop and then you're still not even halfway there.
Which is true, but I, for instance, did some 5-hour training sessions and I had a bar because I wanted to have some bars, like normal. And I found a good one, looked healthy, tasted super great. And I thought, okay, I'm going to bring a couple of those. And I found out just before that training session. So I took one on the training session, knowing that you want to try it out. And I used it after 3 hours, and it was not working at all. I couldn't get it away. Yeah. So even then already you can at least test a little bit.
Yeah. This comes back to training and preparation. But some people prepare for this race. What was your training regime for Uconn?
Well, this year was different for me. Normally I train like an hour a day, an hour and a half a day, 5-6 days a week. And basically the whole year through, and then towards a race like this, I start to do more, like a couple longer ones. Like in the weekend I try to do a 5-hour and maybe 1 3-hour in between. And it's still not a whole lot of hours in length, but it's frequency. But this year I was for a month in Europe, so I came back in beginning of May, and I thought, okay, I got like 2 months now, or 7 weeks, and I haven't paddled much the last month. And the older you get, the quicker you lose your training. It's not like it's still there. After 2 weeks later, you feel it losing little by little. So I needed to start with quick. So I did something different this year. I didn't know if it worked, but I thought it would work. I went like, okay, first week, 1 hour a day, interval training. Second week, 2 hours a day, and then 1 day off. Third week, 3 hours a day, and 6 days. And then I started the same program over again for another session. And I noticed that I got really quickly into shape. Even I do a biking session also every week for like 3 hours on the evening with some people. And even there I noticed after 3 or 4 weeks, I already started passing most of my biker friends.
Yeah.
Although I hadn't biked much in the last year. So yeah, you really do, if you have a certain base, you really do quickly get up to speed again. And so it worked for me this year. And if you do the 1 hour weeks with interval trainings, you still keep some of your speed. Because if you only do endurance races, you get pretty good average for a long time, but you lose on your sprinting. And in races, there's always some sprinting, even in long distance, because people try to get away, so you have to tap, stay with them, or there's a boat passing by, you want to get a little quick draft, the sprint at the start or at the finish. So you need to keep that somehow. And I've noticed that I lost a lot since I do longer races. So, yeah, someone need to keep that up.
How many months would you say you trained?
Well, that was 2 months. Before I was pedaling, I tried to take the winter off for like 4 months.
Yeah.
I don't really train. I surf, so I'm still in the water.
Yeah.
So you stay kind of fit. But I've noticed after after the winter, I start training again. The first hour I pedal, an hour is long. And I think like, how could I think that before in a long race, there was a long race and there was not so long, and now an hour seems already long. So it takes some time again to get back into that rhythm. If you're a full-blown professional and do nothing else, you kind of got to keep going through the winter and just keep that up. Some of the races has done that the last years, and you could see the fruits of that, like with Michael. Michael did it for 1 year. He didn't take off. He just trained the whole winter through pretty hard, and he did well that first race already and the whole season. The only thing what is the problem with that is that some people get tired of always training, and it never stops. So
yeah,
it doesn't work for everybody for a long time.
Yeah,
or for most of us.
Doesn't work for me if I train too much. So I try to.
No, and you need a goal. I need a goal. If I don't have a goal, if I don't have a certain race I train for,
yeah,
I'm not that motivated, because training is only nice if it's always somewhere different. But if you train always in the same place, and it's pretty boring, then so you have to mix it up and try to think of different things. And
yeah,
the goal for me is incredibly important.
Yeah. Well, I'll admit that I basically didn't train at all for this race.
Right.
I think I went swimming a couple of times in the Greek islands when we were there in Europe. That was literally the extent of my training. I'd planned a couple of really long distance paddles there, and they just, for whatever reason, I didn't. So basically, I think I'm a good case study in the fact that pretty much anyone can do this race. If you're a paddler...
You're paddling, you have bases, so that you need that.
I mean, I've paddled for 8 years. I know how to paddle, and I'm not totally out of shape. It's not like, not anyone could do this.
No.
But if you are a paddler, it's not that you have to be a superhuman athlete to do this. Physically, it's not a hard race.
No, but mentally...
Mentally, it's so difficult mentally.
And I've told you in the beginning, I think physically you have to be okay, and mentally you have to be super strong. And not the other way around. If you're physically super strong and mentally okay, you won't make the race.
Yeah.
And I've seen every year with most people who don't make it, except if it's for injury or heat exhaustion, things like that, it's mostly the mental part why they don't make it.
Yeah.
So that says a lot about you, and that's why I thought that you will make it.
Yeah.
As long as you keep your own pace.
Yeah.
And you did, obviously. You went to you went for the hour on the side, and you took it, slowed it down later, and you kept your own pace and you made it. So that, yes, you can.
No, I had a running calculations in my head pretty much the whole week about what I needed to do, where I needed to be at what time. Like, I was just nerding out on the maths of, okay, I've got to be there by 9 p.m. Saturday. This is what I got to be doing right now. And I just set these little mini goals. And I really did go at my own pace. Like, I knew for a while I was racing. I was like, man, I could maybe be like the third sup or something, or like fourth. Like, I could do okay here, because there's only a small field of paddlers.
And it works for a couple hours.
For a couple hours.
Then you get tired, and then suddenly like, oh, maybe not. And
I mean, in hindsight, it never would have worked the whole way through. But what killed me was the headwind.
Yeah,
I just can't paddle.
Second day, the headwind.
The first day, just the lake.
Okay.
As soon as that happened on the lake, I went into survival mode. I was like, okay, the simple goal now is to finish before 9 p.m. Saturday. I didn't care if it was 8:59, which it very nearly was. I didn't care if I was dead last, which I literally was. I was like, all you've got to do is finish, because you've hyped this up way too much. Everybody knows you're doing it. Like, if I was just an anonymous paddler and didn't have separation from the paddling, and like I didn't talk about this, I would have been very close to quitting, because I didn't have any accountability if no one knew I was doing it.
Right.
Like, I could just sneak off and like, all right.
Yeah, but everybody always has some kind of accountability. There's no solo person who doesn't have any friends or any family, any wife.
But that's what I was going to say. I think the key is, if someone wants to do this, like, not everyone writes a blog or whatever. The key, I think, is to tell everybody you're going to do it.
Yes.
And not just say, oh, I'm entering the Yukon. Like, tell everyone you know that you're going to finish the Yukon River Quest. Tell your family, your friends, like, post on Instagram saying, I'm doing it and I'm going to finish. And then when you're in the middle of the race, you're like, this is fucked, I got to quit. You're like, oh, I told everyone I'm going to finish. And no one will be disappointed that you didn't make it. Like, everyone will understand, but they're not going to be, there's no, like, you know, there's no celebration if you don't finish.
Yeah.
So you're not a failure if you don't finish, but you're missing out on that amazing elation at the end.
Yes.
So I think really the secret for me was just, like, whether you tell 10 people or 1,000 people, the key is to just say you're going to do it. And then all you got to do is hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the whole lesson of the whole race. I was like looking for all these like big spiritual epiphanies. And really what I got was like waiting for Jesus to come down from the mountain and say, this is the meaning of life. He never appeared. The main thing I got out of it was like, if you commit to doing something, you can do it. Like, it's a very, very simple lesson in life, but it was the most, it was the clearest lesson I've ever had.
And it's the other metaphor is, even when you get big hurdles, like when the wind picks up, you think like, oh, this is impossible. How can I do this for the next so many hours? But in hindsight, it took me, like when the wind picked up that day, it was 8 hours to the break. Normally it would have taken me 6 hours, or it was 8.5 and it took me normally 6 hours. So it was 2.5 hours more, which is not a whole lot on the whole race. But
it's like 3% of the race, 4% of the race.
Yes, but on the day it was maybe 25% more, which is still not a whole lot. But mentally, it looks like a way bigger barricade. But if you, like the harder something gets, the more I break it down. Next corner, next page, next hour. And then you notice every time you do it like that, another hour gone, and another page gone, another page gone.
Yeah.
At some point you think, 2 more pages, 2 more hours, I'm there. And maybe it takes 2.5 because it's still hard. And suddenly you're there and you're like, that actually worked and it was not that hard.
Yeah.
That's the mind too, that often something is hard and you get there and the mind quickly changes and says, okay, that was actually not so hard.
Yeah, it's amazing that we talk about this race in terms of pages. Like, what race anywhere is measured in pages?
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. But there's that one map. Everybody uses the same map, the Rock map.
It's a very simple map.
It's very simple.
Very, very simple drawings.
Very simple.
It just has the lines of the river and it shows some mountains and some rock formations in very simple lines. But those help a lot. It shows trees everywhere, which don't help much, I think.
If I see another pine tree again.
And it says ochre trees, which is a kind of pine tree, I suppose. But it says everywhere. So and it's full of pine trees here. And when it says old burn, it means that there has been a fire there.
That actually helped because you could see when the young trees were in.
Yes.
And you could see like there's like new burn or fresh burn and old burn. You could see like, okay, there's these little saplings. It must have been the fresh burn. There's old burn. They're like already 10 meters tall. Actually, I got better information from that map of what was off the water than on it. Because on it, he talks about all the islands, and that's what you're meant to navigate, the river, the channels. But I'd look at these islands and just get lost because you can't look at them from there. But you can see the mountains much clearer, like what the shape is. Because you can't see the shape of an island from when you're approaching it. You're on the same level as it. You don't know what's around there.
Yeah, but I do it like this, and I see a corner, and I know the corners on the map. After the corner is one island, so I see the island, and the next island is there, and there should be a third island, and then the next corner should come. So I do go island by island.
But as soon as you miss one,
you're fucked.
You're like on that last day, there's a stretch of about 8 or 10 hours where you're in a labyrinth of islands. Yes. There's just hundreds of islands. Every page on the map looks identical. It's just a mirror image. There's like an S going this way, an S going that way. There's 20 islands, there's sandbars, there's lots of trees. And if you miss one island and you're like, I think I'm at that island. And when you realize that's not the island, you're like, well, am I one below or above? And you start like, you get lost. Yeah. So easy.
And often you have to make a choice left or right. And you can make an educated choice if you don't know and you cannot see it on the map because of the current sometimes, but it's not always clear. And sometimes it could make big difference in speed and in getting there in time. The first year I almost lost it because of it.
The river is almost 1 kilometer wide in some parts. It gets massive towards the end.
Yes.
So it's really a labyrinth. Like if you're on the left side and you're meant to be over here, you're way off course.
Yes.
And there's a lot of times where I know I was in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I must have lost hours by going the wrong way. And Stu, our guide, had drawn the line on the map. All I had to do was follow his line. And a couple of times I was like on the wrong page, I was on the wrong island, I was going the wrong way. A couple of times I was like, Stu doesn't know what he's talking about. It's way quicker this way. I was like, fuck, he was right. That just cost me another 20 minutes. And it all adds up. Between navigation issues and the headwind and the breaks I took, I probably lost 8 hours.
Yeah.
Just not even going into training and preparation. I could have been 8 hours quicker if I'd been more focused.
But even the top teams who do it in a canoe and have been doing it for the last 15 years, every year, even they make still mistakes, and because the river changes every year.
Yeah, this river is literally eating itself.
The ice moves sometimes gravel bars because it depends when the ice goes away and when not, and sometimes a lot of ice, but the water starts moving already. And it can push gravel bars suddenly over to the left or the right. So especially if not with the wider, bigger sections, but when it gets messy and there's a lot of gravel bars, then it starts to be complicated. And so often I have to look and see, okay, the flow says a lot. You can do the whole thing just by flow, but you have to be really good at reading the flow, and that is only training and experience. You cannot just do that like that.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. The lake we were on is frozen in winter.
Yes, it is.
And the river is just full of ice. It's like
for the longest time.
Minus 40 Celsius here. It's freezing here in winter.
It's very hard to understand. Yes, and the temperature different even now. Like you said, it was 0 to 5 degrees in the night, and during the day, I think the day we arrived, it was up to 31.
Oh, there's a couple of days in the water. It was pretty bloody hot.
Yes, but for me, heat is easy to regulate. Cold is harder. Heat, you can splash yourself, and the water is quite fresh in the river, so yeah, that's easy. Even on the MR340, where we had 42 degrees, I could regulate that quite easily.
It's easier to cool down than warm up.
To warm up, you have to watch out,
Yeah. So there's so many, we're talking about how many different elements there are to this race, but at the end it's still a race. So what goes through your mind when you're getting towards the end?
I start calculating like how when I get where and how should I manage my time. The thing is you cannot keep going forever. So if you get tired, you start to think like, okay, maybe I need to eat something. You come up. They're not really excuses, but the excuses become a little more when you get more tired.
Convince yourself more easily.
Yes. But the trick is to, even if you do that, keep it short.
Did you ever stop once when you didn't have to? Apart from the 2 mandatory breaks, there's 10 hours of mandatory rest.
Like stop at
Did you ever stop on the side of the river?
No, I never do.
Not once?
No, that's
I think I stopped about 8 times.
Okay. No, but
I slept once.
That's almost that's a no because you lose out on the free current.
That's the interesting thing. I think if I do it again, you take a break on your board.
Yes, and you're still moving. There's some places where you go 10 kilometers an hour on fast part, and on slower part you go 6, and it's all for free. So if you take a 20-minute break, you're 2 to 3 kilometers further.
Yes.
Without doing anything.
A toilet break is tricky though on the board.
Yeah, but that I managed to.
Really?
Well, yes.
Well, it's easy to take a piss off the side of the board.
I do that almost every 2 hours.
Yeah.
But taking a poo.
How do you do that on the board?
No, it starts on race day. The days before, you make sure that you go to the bathroom really early in the morning. And I know if I eat a lot or quite a lot, I can do it early morning, and I can just do it before the start.
And you get all the way through the Carmax?
And I get all the way to the
24
Carmax.
hours later?
I arrive there, go again, and I eat something right away, sleep, go again just before I go, and I'm all the way good until the next break for 18 hours. Go there, twice, do the same thing.
And to the finish?
Yes, so I never have to do that.
You never had to stop?
No.
Take a crap?
No.
I had to do that twice.
Okay. Yeah, so I
had to take it just in the middle of nowhere. Things. Just me and the bears, just waiting for him. But
looking left and right.
Yeah, it's like actually The second one, the first one, I was in the middle of nowhere. I was in no man's land. Like no one was half an hour ahead or behind me. So it's like, I was literally on a rocky outcrop in the middle with zero privacy. Just me and the midnight sun and Jesus waiting to come down and tell me the meaning of life. He's like, I'll wait for you to finish, then I'll come down. But the second time, I was really close to a few teams and I'd just overtaken this 2-woman canoe team. I was like, God, like I'm not gonna last 5 minutes. I gotta go take a crap. So I was like, as soon as I saw a bush, I pulled over. And I was just running around. I couldn't took these baby wipes. I couldn't find them in my pack. And I was like freaking out. I was like, I gotta go. I'm wasting time. So I got like the gauze pads from my medical kit, grabbed a couple of them out and then like pulled my pants down. And as soon as I pulled my pants down, I see the women's canoe coming. I was like, fuck, now I gotta go right further around the corner. So I was like basically like inside this bush, my pants around my ankles. And it wasn't the most flattering
but in race like
image you could imagine, but like you just got to do it.
Yes.
You can't, like, what are you going to do? I had about 16 hours to the next stop.
But imagine, for us it's easy. But like for women in kayak, it's a whole other game. And that's...
Ooh, I've heard some interesting strategies, at least like taking a piss.
Yes.
Like they'll just hang their butt over the edge.
There's a whole other work and it's...
And some just piss in the canoe or kayak. Yeah. Men and women, they'll like piss inside.
Yes, that's
I heard some of the voyages had an interesting smell by the end. Was that you that was telling me?
Yeah, all of them had, yeah.
So people just pissing inside their
butts. But most have a system, or they have like a special bottle. Even women have a special bottle, and then it works. So, but you really, even those small things you have to manage somehow.
Yeah, toilet breaks become a strategic part of the race.
Yes.
That's how ridiculous this race is. It's so extreme that regulating your toilet breaks can be the difference between finishing first or second.
Yeah.
And like this race was close. Like the winners were 10 minutes, the line honors winners, the 2-man canoe were 10 minutes ahead of the defending champions.
Yeah, the 6-man canoe and the 2-man canoe, they were super close. And I talked to the 2-man canoe. They're incredible, fast, world-class paddlers. And a 2-man canoe is actually a really fast craft. They can do like 12 kilometers an hour on flat water for a long, long time. Stand-up paddlers, you can do that at the sprint start, but that stops really quick. But they said they went really well through the wind, and that they probably won because of that. Because it's not easy to win from a 6-man canoe.
The Voyagers catch a lot of the wind. They got big.
Yeah, they had a hard time with the wind.
They're funky looking boats. Some traditional thing around here.
Yes.
I've never really seen them before. But that's another interesting part of it. These things called the Voyagers. It's like it's like in our world we have the 6-man outrigger. In this part in Canada they have Voyager canoes.
Yes.
That's their 6-man outriggers. But it's like these old.
Yeah, mostly it's 10, the big ones, but the racing ones they are 6 and they're more narrow. Yeah. But the 10 one, you have also 10-man Voyagers. I saw a
9-man one out there, like a 9 mixed crew.
And they do it more. Although they can be really fast, they mostly are more there to do that together. And if you have those bigger crews, it's actually it's pretty nice because you can help each other. If somebody wants to take a break real quick, you can still move. I asked the 6-man canoe, and they actually said that, because I was wondering if one stops of the 6-man paddling, how much speed would they lose?
Yeah.
He says, it's about 0.0.
Yeah.
I was surprised how little there was, and how. But still, that's important for them.
They can hold their speed when one stops paddling.
Yes.
So basically, they got such an advantage over us because they can regulate their brakes.
No, their speed is so consistent.
They never.
No.
Yeah. I think I'm coming back as a team next year.
Yeah. No, solo.
Quick blade all stars. We're gonna get. Trevor's gonna do the solo sup. I'm gonna do a 6-man Voyager or something. That's because that was one of the most fascinating races I've ever done, but it was tough. And I knew it'd be tough, of course. It's a 700-kilometer race. You're an idiot if you take it lightly. But I didn't think it'd be that tough. And I thought in the end it became tougher for different reasons. Like I never doubted that I'd finish. Like I was very confident that I'd finish. Even though I hadn't trained, we're downstream, I'll eventually get there. Even if I miss the cutoff time. So my goal was basically just don't miss the cutoff time. That was what I was concerned about. I knew I'd get there, but I didn't realize the reasons why it'd be so hard. And I think the biggest thing for me was focus and sleep deprivation. Like when you get tired, I found myself on maybe the second day when it was that big 34-hour stretch, I'd just stop paddling for 5 minutes and just be staring off into space at the scenery. And I'd catch myself. I'm like, you haven't moved your paddle for 5 minutes. What are you doing? And then I'd just keep paddling. I'd take a few strokes and I'd just stop. And I couldn't physically force myself to keep paddling.
Okay.
And it was this very strange feeling that I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's when you really have to go into your own mind as like, you just got to tell your body to do it. Just harden up.
Yeah, so for me, I still keep pedaling, but I noticed that same thing, you suddenly notice like, oh, I slowed down again. So I keep pedaling at a certain pace, and no matter how tired I am, and I zone out, and your eyes go a little bit out of focus, and you start to yawn a lot. And when the yawning starts, you know the sleepy time starts.
Yeah.
And so there's a few things to get out of that for me.
What's your technique?
One is it doesn't help to splash water. It's like opening the window when you're tired in the car. You think like, this is good, and then you close the window and it's gone again. But it's for me, it's if you really have it, sit down, eat something real quick. If you have something with caffeine, it helps. But I mostly don't use so much with caffeine. But I had a few like those block shots with caffeine. Sometimes this helps you to get out. Mostly I get okay through the night, and it starts with in the morning when it's really light. And what I do if it's really it happens every 20 minutes again, and you can't really snap out of it. I go lay on my back, like in a child pose, and try to doze off for.
So you just hug your bag.
Yes.
Kneel down and hug
long
your bag.
arms. And you try to relax everything, and you notice that you really you fall away for 10 seconds.
Did you do that this year?
Yes, a couple times. And it doesn't take long. And maybe you sit down there because you mostly combine it with something food. So you do it for a couple minutes. It doesn't cost a whole lot of time. And mostly after that, you're good for a while. And if it's a bad time, you may have to do this 3 times in 3 or 4 hours. But that gets you somehow through that time. Because for me, the most speed gain I can get compared to other paddlers is there.
Yeah.
To keep that time consistent and not lose too much.
Yeah. I caught myself falling asleep.
Yes.
Many times.
Yeah.
Like there's a few times where I don't know if I did sleep or just like a micro sleep or whatever, but I was on the board and all of a sudden I was literally falling asleep standing up.
Yeah, I think it's a nanosecond, or it's a second, because the imbalance will wake you up instantly, and if you fall asleep, your imbalance will be kicking in pretty quick.
Yeah.
But even in the Yukon 1000, I had it about 20 times a day, and Ike, my partner, he would freak out about it in the beginning when I had it and he didn't.
Yeah.
And because you almost fall off, but I can still correct it with my pedal. So you almost fall off, but you somehow put the pedal on the right side and you still stay on. So that's not so bad if that happens. It's not like, and I fell in the water once in all the 4 years, and I was in the beginning like a few kilometers after the start because I was looking around.
Well, yeah, actually, I was happy I didn't fall in once this year.
Which is sometimes, like in the night, you think, if I fall now, it's not good.
God.
You have to change all clothes. And, yes.
That would have been the end.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got decent balance, and I had the wide board, I had the All-Star 27, 14 by 27.
Yeah, I was glad you took that.
Yeah.
Especially this year with the wind.
That was a good board for this. I never felt unstable, even when I was falling asleep. But yeah, it was weird, these little micro sleeps, which actually, like, one of the big causes of car accidents is micro sleeps. Like, people fall asleep for literally half a second, and they just go alongside the road and they crash.
Yeah.
And we had the same thing here. Obviously, much lower consequences, but it was weird. And when that happens, like, especially when you're 12 hours from the finish, like, you've got to find a solution because you can't battle that for 12 hours and ignore it. Like, you can't ignore the fact you're falling asleep for 12 hours. No. You've got to find something around
solution in between, But somehow, during the morning, when you think like, they will never stop suddenly, then it's gone, and then it's gone then for a long time. That's
true. You can fight through it, and you'll go, it like goes in phases.
Yeah.
And it's very strange what time of day it'll hit you.
Yes.
But the only solution I found, apart from stopping, which I didn't want to do too much, was I'd paddle on my knees, which I was doing a bit in the headwind anyway.
Okay.
But even when there wasn't and I was falling asleep, I found paddling on my knees would actually not only stop me from falling over, but it would wake me up. It's just something about it was so uncomfortable for me.
Okay.
It's just like my knees were killing.
Yeah.
And I can actually, like, you can do a slightly faster, shorter stroke on your knees.
Yeah.
So you're suddenly in this little rapid Tahitian style thing, and it really woke me up.
Okay.
But I think the hardest thing this whole race was sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
It's really a really strange thing.
Well, it's not so strange thinking that you have to paddle for 81 hours. And
I mean, I expected it.
71 hours, and 10 hours were rest, which is kind of little.
And I mean, rest, there was probably 6 or 7 hours of sleep in that 71 hours.
Yes.
So I was going basically 3 days with 2 hours sleep a night or something, and paddling all day, every day.
Yes.
It's not natural.
No.
And the interesting thing was, after Carmack, so you get almost halfway through the race, and you reach like this mythical oasis called Carmack, which is this tiny little village along the river. Pretty much the only point between the start and the finish of this race where you get like internet reception. And that's kind of the ground zero of the center of the race. All the support crews are there. Everyone has to stop there for 7 hours. Everyone gets to sleep.
And you're allowed to get support.
And you're allowed to get support there, which is like, that's the other element of this race that is so critical, is a good support team. Like, to say this is an individual, like, because we have categories, right? There's solo, there's C2, C4, C8. But even the solo paddlers aren't solo. Like, we've got a team around us.
Yeah.
And I was extremely lucky to have like Trevor, Callie, and Stuart was a legend. But if you don't have a good support team, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's time you cannot sleep. And for me, I don't need so much motivation, but I've seen a lot of paddlers who need the emotional backup, like you can do it.
I needed that, Jesus.
But for me, it's just efficiency. They have food kind of ready, and they give you some stuff, and you can eat within half an hour. You can be in your bed if you wanna. Yeah,
for me, it was definitely both. When I got there, everything was ready. Like, there was a tent. I was like, they showed me where the tent was. Like, whose tent is this? This isn't even our tent. And they're like, just sleep. I was like, all right, great. It's a comfy tent. And just the emotional support, like someone's there to cheer you on and give you a hug, and like they're ready. They'll fill up your water bags. You can maximize your sleep. You feel a little bit better about yourself knowing you're not totally alone on this bloody river that never ends. And you feel so much better the next day. Like, it's incredible how much, even though that's a terribly short night's sleep.
Oh yeah.
Like, we missed a whole night. We paddled all night.
Yeah.
You paddled for 24 hours. I paddled for 34 hours. We should be sleeping for the next 12, 16 hours.
Yes.
We only slept for about 5 or 6. But even that made the world difference.
My body felt like new.
Yeah, I felt fresh. Next day I was like,
right.
I got this.
It is not fresh and it's not new, but it feels like that, which...
Relatively, it's all relative, and you just feel like this is so much better. So the next morning, by this point, I finished at Carmack at 10 p.m. Thursday. So 34 hours after we started. So restarted at Friday morning at 5 a.m. I was, I think, the third last boat to leave Carmack. So I was third last at this point. And for the next 8 hours, I was like on top of the world. There was no wind. It was overcast. It was perfect paddling conditions. It was nice, a little variety of scenery. I went through those rapids. There was some interesting stretches on the river. I felt fantastic. And actually, at one point, I clearly remember, I thought I'd been paddling for about 30 minutes. I was like, I was looking at my watch as little as possible, because you don't want to count every minute. You go crazy. So how long has it been? I'm curious. I was like, has it been 30 minutes? Has it been 45? Like, maybe it's been an hour. And I looked at my watch, it had been 4 hours. I was like, where did I go for the other 3.5? Like, where was I? Was I here the whole time? Did I stop paddling? Did I keep paddling? Did someone pick me up and like drop me down the river? Did I sleep? It was the trippiest experience. I couldn't figure out what had happened to 3.5 hours.
Yes. And
the same thing happened. Actually, the two women on the canoe passed me around that time. And I was like, my phone's been in airplane mode. It's changed time zones. It's like glitched out. It's like, we've kind of been going more than an hour. So I asked them, I was like, what's the time? Like, it's 9 a.m. We've been going 4 hours. It blew my mind. And then again, further down, we got to the 8-hour mark. And I was like, I forgot that it had already been 4 hours. I was like, it feels like 3 hours. And I was just like, it's 8 hours. So that stretch was magnificent. And then we got to Minto, which is the last meeting point of your support crew, if they want. It's the last basically road access of the race for the next 400 kilometers. After that, you're totally off the grid in the middle of nowhere. And there I met up with the support crew and I was like, man, I feel great. Like, I'm going to let's make early dinner plans tomorrow night. I'm going to be in freaking Dawson by like 5 p.m. We got this. Not 5 minutes later, like, I don't know how many times I jinxed myself in this race, but this was another one of them. Like, the headwind from hell came up. And for the next 8 hours, I was just battling this endless headwind.
Yes.
And that was the closest I got to breaking. If there was like a little emergency exit that said, just come over here, you can quit the race right now if you want, I would have been very tempted to get out. But fortunately, there's nowhere to go. No. You just have to keep paddling. And that's actually one of the motivators in this race, is that if you decide to quit, you kind of got to keep paddling to the next exit anyway. So you might as well just keep going.
Yeah. And most people actually will pass CarMax, they finish.
Yeah.
I think 80% of the people or 90% of the people quit at CarMax or before and not after. Because after you already had the feeling.
It's hard to quit after that.
Yeah,
it's physically hard to quit.
And it's physically hard, but you always already past half. And you have the feeling you go towards the finish and you know that the break is not, like for me, 24 hours away, but it's 18 hours away.
Yes.
So that's shorter. I know the break is only 3 hours, but mentally that break feels as important. And I had my 8.5 hours against the wind up to that break.
Yeah.
So when I got there, I was toast. And the break there it's very simple. It's in the middle of nowhere. You can only get there by boat or helicopter. And there's basically just a big tent, open tent tent where you can lay in the grass underneath on your own, whatever you pull out your bag. And they have some soup, coffee, and cookies.
Yeah, all the soup and cookies were gone by the time I got there.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
I was pretty sad when I got to that camp. I was like, this is going to be an oasis. I'm going to sleep for 3 full hours. All the food was gone. There was just a few stragglers snoring on the tarpaulin. I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I prepare for when I wake back up? Do I just go straight to sleep? I was so disoriented. I just I can't sleep next to these people snoring. I just grabbed my sleeping bag, went under a tree like 100 meters away and just laid down on the dirt. And I think I maybe slept for 45 minutes.
Okay.
And in my head, I'd been over hyping this break. I was like, because the first leg there's 3 legs. There's a third, for me, it was a 34-hour stretch, then a nice 7-hour break. Then there was a 21-hour stretch and a 3-hour break. And then there was the final, I think, 16-hour stretch. So the stretches got smaller, but that middle one was tough because I was expecting to have more sleep, basically. And yes. So in the end, we went 21 hours and then 16 hours with 45 minutes sleep in between. Man, that was tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not much, but still, for me, it made a big difference. Again, I felt like, I'm totally good.
Yeah, it definitely
again.
helped. But yeah, I overthought it. I thought too much in my mind. I was like, you're gonna have a great night's sleep. You'll be refreshed. They might even have showers there. You'll be 3-course breakfast. You'll be right. It was just we're in the middle of nowhere. And there's no support. That's the thing. That one, you're self-supported.
Yes.
They'll help you get your board out. That's it. The rest, you got to sort your own shit out. And
so
after that,
it's 12. For me, it's 12 to 13 hours.
Yeah, I was about 16.
But I know it's a more difficult stretch, like you said. That there's a lot of islands. But it's also, I call it the home stretch, because you're so close to the finish already that every hour you know that you're closer, and that's where I start. When I'm there, I'm gonna roughly arrive that time. I'm gonna have this big breakfast, and then so you start to think what you're gonna do, and that's kind of the nice things about this race, that you start to appreciate these things, and you're gonna call my wife and tell her this and this stories and things like that, and you're looking forward to those things, and that's part of the joy of doing something harder. That I call it the appreciation of life, friends, food, and family, and the little things you take for granted around you.
Yeah.
And so
I think it makes you definitely appreciate things in this race. Like this race makes you appreciate things in life.
Yes.
Like how simple we need it to be happy. Like we don't need anything fancy or superficial, which I think by this point, hopefully a lot of people have realized, especially in this community where, you know, we're very outgoing, outdoorsy people, but this race really made it clear for me. Like I know there was one point where I was, to be just, you know, to paint a very graphic, unflattering picture, I had to stop on that rock island, like take a crap, and then I laid down like 5 meters away from where I'd just gone in an open air toilet and slept for 20 minutes. I was like, this is just the worst image of a person you can imagine. Like I haven't showered in a day and a half. I'm exhausted. I've just taken a dump on the rocks and I'm sleeping right next to it. Like, but I was like, that's all I needed in that moment. I was like, I'm happy now. And it makes you realize like, I don't need 5-star hotels.
Life is...
I was literally happy to sleep on a rock.
Yes.
Next to the toilet.
Pretty simple sometimes.
So I think that's one of the things in this race is that it really does put things into perspective.
Yeah.
Because
in the hardest moments for me, I think of two people in the past, or two kind of people, like the slaves in the slave boat who had to row. That was hard. What we do is easy because we can grab some food if we want, and there's not a guy sweeping you up and things like that. So it's always relative. And the same with the Crusades, who walked for months and yeah, I think it was months, not weeks, months, to far countries and in really difficult circumstances and really cold and hot and things like that.
Yeah,
that was really hard. What we do is we get close for a little bit, but that's different.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
that's a very good
always
perspective.
Relative. Because sometimes I see people around me, and they whine
in
about
everyday life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they whine about things like it's that those things are not important, and it's also
like their mobile internet's too slow, or
like my wife
didn't get enough likes on Instagram, or
yes. Yeah, my wife had melanoma, so that also puts things. It's the same thing. It puts things in perspective. Like if she hears friends talking about really small things which are so unimportant, you think like, why are you whining about this? There's other things which are so much more important in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all for me. It is. That's my spiritual side, and that's the closest thing I get to a spiritual side in life at all, because I'm not religious at all. But that's, I think, is a little life lesson.
Yeah, I think it's a very zen experience, this race. I think every paddler should try it.
Yeah.
I said about 11 cities. Now we're graduating onto the Yukon. If you really want to twist your mind into it, put it on a different plane, this race will do it. And everybody has, I thought it was interesting, we interviewed all the paddlers at the end and about their reasons why. And this documentary we're making is essentially exploring why people do this.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that everybody had a different answer.
Yes, they did.
My answer to this was basically, the reason why I'm doing this is to find out why I'm doing it, if that makes sense. I know I wanted to do this, but I didn't know why I wanted to do it.
No, because you've been told that, people like me told you, oh, you have to do this, but you have to find out, because it's hard to understand.
I had to find out for myself.
Yes.
But I that was basically my reason. I wanted to do it to find out why I wanted to do it.
Okay.
And then other people like Shauna, who won the women's race and was phenomenal. She crushed it.
Yeah.
That was a very fast time in a very slow year. She was third overall.
She took it very seriously also, her preparation.
Man, see her map? God, that was just deep. I felt so bad when I saw her map. I was like, she's prepared.
Art, yeah.
God, she had motivational quotes. She'd colored in textures of the gradients, and she's on another level of preparation.
Yeah.
But she lost her mum to cancer last year, and for her, she was like, I just wanted to prove that I could do something a bit difficult. She wanted to overcome something difficult, and it was part of her healing process and dealing with the loss and the trauma. And then Brad, who was the third guy over the line, fourth overall, he's got a 4-year-old son, and he just wanted to show his son that difficult things can be done if you're determined. Peter was he's already done it before. He's he just wanted to improve on his own time. And the British, there's the soldiers that I paddled with, and their motivation was basically this is what they do in life. They're soldiers. they live for this kind of thing and they push themselves.
Yes.
So for them, it was almost a no-brainer. I was like, yeah, okay, 3 days of paddling. That's just like being back in boot camp.
Yeah.
But what's your reason why?
Yeah, it has
Because this is your fourth time.
It has changed over time because the first time you do it, the first time I did it was probably because it's like a climber who sees all those mountains in the world.
Just
and
because
like,
it's there.
Because, well, yeah, the challenge is there. Because it's there, it sounds a little weird, but the challenge is there. You see these mountains, thinking, how can I do it? And so it's mostly a challenge against yourself. And then for me, other races are a challenge too. I like to measure myself. So that's an extra, that's why you come back also, because the challenge is already done. But you always think like you can do it better or different. And you want to measure yourself against the ones who do it then the year after, or the elements are going to change like this year.
Do you learn anything new about yourself, or have you already gone like so far out into your Zen zone in these races?
About myself or about the
About yourself, because you've done so many of these extreme things. Are you still learning new things? Are you still exploring your own mind?
No, I don't think so much anymore. I think more you know a lot of things happen, but I know, for instance, that when I start to be tired, I start to linger a little more. When you think like, oh, maybe I should do this or do that, and so you think of a lot of small excuses to take short breaks. But I learned how to keep them really short, and I've learned of small things how to motivate myself. And I do a weird thing, because the hardest thing for me is all my muscles in my back, they start to hurt, and it's not like a cramp at all, but it's just they're super tired, and they tell you this the whole time. Bart, I'm really tired. All the muscles tell you that at the same time.
Yeah.
But you still keep going, but they tell you don't go, still keep going. So there's a few things. Or either you do the child pose real quick, and that's a small 30 seconds motivation, 1 minute motivation, and it relaxes you a little bit, and you keep going again. The other thing I do is you have the pedal and you have your life vest. I put the pedal between my life vest, twist it halfway, and then your knob is basically like a massage.
Yeah, right.
And you do this a couple times up and down.
Wow.
And your back feels relieved.
That's a good one.
And so I do this. I don't do this often, but I do it every now and then. When I'm really like, I cannot do it anymore. And then I can keep going again for 45 minutes or an hour. And so you need those small tools and you learn what works. And food works for me too. I can be happy with something different. This year was salty crackers with peanut butter and beef jerky.
Yeah.
When I really need something different, I take those like, this is nice. And you take a few minutes longer, and it's weird, but it's small things, and it sounds weird now, but at that moment you're content. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
And there's not many moments, or there's no moment I think I'm not gonna make it. There's just moments where you think, I'm gonna lose more time because it's harder.
Yeah.
And you're a lot involved in your head, and like the calculation. You do a lot of calculations, I've noticed. Yeah.
For me, that was what kept my sanity. On the final day, I turned on this, I had my phone with me. Obviously it was on airplane mode because you're in the middle of nowhere, but it dawned on me on the last day. I was with the British soldiers, and we'd hit Coffee Creek. Because of the headwind, we hit Coffee Creek 2.5 hours later than we thought. We hit it at almost 3 a.m. Saturday morning, the day we were supposed to be finishing, and we were still just limping into the second rest stop. So we realized we're going to be on the water just before 6 a.m. We've got like 13 hours to finish, and we had, I think it was 170 kilometers. So we're doing all these calculations. Okay, we've got to go this, 11 point whatever it was, all day long, which isn't that hard with the river flow, but when you're that exhausted, you can very easily drop under it. So basically the whole day I was doing these calculations, and I realized what got me so excited and what got me through the final day was I got this running app with this voice coach where this lady will yell out, all these stats to you as often as you want. So I just set it to one thing, speed, how fast am I going, and 1 minute intervals. So literally every 60 seconds for 16 hours, this lady was yelling out, all right, you're going 11.5. All right, now you're on 12.1. Oh, you're going to like 8.7. Hurry up. Like this kept me going. And it was really interesting reading the current. On the final day, I finally realized how much I'd fucked it up on the other 3 days and just how important the river is.
Yeah.
Because when you're like, most of the time you should sit in the middle. It's faster, but on the edges, it looks way quicker, especially when you're there because it's shallower. So you get all these like feathering on the water, like you get these ripples and these tiny little rapids, and you're like, man,
fast. It looks
it's just flying over there, and you can see the trees right behind that water texture, and it's moving so much faster past it.
Yeah.
And then when you go over there, you're like flying past the trees because they're right there.
Right.
And when you're in the middle, the trees look like they're relatively passing slower.
Yeah.
So all these optical illusions make you think the side of the river is faster.
Yeah.
But when I did the GPS, I realized it's like at least a kilometer, sometimes 2 or 3 faster in the middle.
Yes.
It's like, how many hours have I wasted hugging the shore?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like earlier on the shore is a little bit quicker when it's narrow, but when it gets wider, it's almost always better out in the middle.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting because it taught me, A, that I'd fucked it up for a while and I could finally get it right. And B, just having someone talk to me every minute because I'd been alone most of the race. Just having somebody was like, all right, just this computer voice every minute is actually keeping me awake and keeping me focused. And I'd like get into this trance where it's like, okay, it must have been 55 seconds. And sure enough, a second later, she's like, all right, 12.1 kilometers an hour. And I go again. And I knew every one of those was like inching me closer and closer. So it's just like these tiny little chips, chip away, chip away. And even though I had to do something insane, like 850 of these updates to get there, I knew that it'd keep me going. So I think it's interesting what you can rely on to get you through these dark hours.
Yeah. Small tools.
But it was the other thing that really got me through that final day was the contrast in the river, because there was the river changes a lot, especially in that last probably 120 kilometers. Once you get the White River confluence hitting, it speeds up for starters.
Yes.
The river goes a totally different color. It goes much wider, and it goes into this barren, like moonscape or something. Like there's just dead trees everywhere, and just these like desolate sandbars, and like the hills look browner, and it's like you're on a different planet. And for a little while there, I was like, I had started tripping out. I was like, I'm not on Earth anymore. Like, where am I? This can't be Earth. It's just so strange. And I think there's one. I was doing these little Gopro updates for the movie, and I look back on the footage. There's one where I just did most of them were about 10-20 seconds. One is a 10.5 minute monologue, and I'm a little nervous to listen back to what I actually say because I know exactly where it was recorded, and it was right when I was tripping out about the landscape. I can only imagine.
the hallucinations.
Yes, that was the other thing. Like, what did you see out there?
Well, I never have big hallucinations like that. Famously, Lina Augiatis, she did the...
she was the pioneer.
She was first
2016.
year. And she had a hard time, especially the last 12 hours. And she got to the finish, and she grabbed my arm. I was one of the first to hug her, like, well done. And she grabbed me, she said, Bart, I saw dead people and they were trying to drown me. And she had those big eyes, so I knew it was not a joke. It was like she really meant it. And that...
Wow.
Yes. And I've heard stories from people that went going in circles, and then the last boat, the sweeper boat, asked her, what are you doing? They said, yeah, I'm trying to kill gummy bears. They were trying to pull me down in the water. So, but that's the extremes. What I have is different. I have more imagination.
Killer gummy bears. That's a good one.
When I see the rock formations, I see faces and masks and Indians, and I see all kinds of things in there. And it's just, I think, how much artwork I see with. So it's weird that I'm not creative, but suddenly you have this in you. With your own mind, which you never have, because during the day I don't see it. I've tried it like on a clear moment during the day, and I do the same thing, and I don't see it.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting. So I know I have it a little bit. It's not I don't see people, but this year I talked to somebody who said that there were other stand-up paddlers. It was Shauna, I think. Oh, yeah. Shauna said that there were other stand-up paddlers trying to overtake her in the end of the race.
She was seeing
Yes,
paddlers.
yes, and they were not there.
Wow. I was, I don't know if I hallucinated or if just my eyes were playing tricks. I don't know what you'd call it, but every second island, there was an Indian chief watching me.
It's the same thing. It's the piece of wood.
Yeah, it was always a tree stump.
Yes,
But like dead set, it was just a perfect Indian. He was the same guy every time. I saw the feathers. He was sitting down, like in a chair. He had the black hair, the feathers, like spot on. Like from a kilometer away, I was like, shit, he's there again. I was like, it's another tree stump.
That's what they call hallucinations.
But we're going through the First Nations, right? We go through 5 First Nations of indigenous people. So I started to think, I was like, maybe I've let him down. Like maybe he's watching over me, or like, what's he doing? Like, I was sure that there was an Indian chief. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was, I was 100% convinced that the drone was following me for half the race. Because Trevor was flying the drone like a couple of spots, and it's that, that annoying buzz, like a giant mosquito. So many times when we're in the middle of the night, I was like, it's physically impossible for him to be here. I was like, fuck the drone again. Like, it's behind me. Like, I'd look around. Like, if anyone was with me, they must have thought I was like losing it, because I was looking around for a drone that clearly wasn't there. And the other thing was the rocks, like so many faces. So
some people hearing all this must be thinking like, is this really healthy for me?
Yeah, we highly recommend you do the Yukon River Quest. It's a great experience. But I think that it's what makes it such an interesting experience, is because these things that we're talking about are not normal.
No.
You very, very rarely experience this, but it is interesting to experience it.
Yeah.
And you're safe. Like, you got so much safety out there. You got GPS tracking down to the centimeter. You've got a lot of safety boats. You could theoretically die out there, but there's a lot of safety precautions. It's not a loosely organized race by any stretch. No, they're very safe.
It's very well done. Some people call it not safe because that's just not the where they want to go. Because you might be 100 kilometers from the first safety boat. And you have to be self-reliant for 36 hours in the worst case.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to you, but it's relatively...
There's a lot of... They do take a lot of precautions.
A lot of things I do with all the expeditions and the things, they say it's crazy, or you're crazy. And I think it's all perspective, because... And I mostly use the car, which is very commonly used, but sitting in a car, things can go wrong so quick. And what I do, actually, things don't go wrong quick. Things go wrong really slowly. You have a lot of time to manipulate it, and most things you can avoid totally. So I don't think it's unsafe at all, what we do.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things which people don't think about at all, which are so much unsafer and more life-threatening, that it's all perspective. The same as the kayakers and the canoeists, they say, oh, what you're doing is crazy. In this race, they all think that we are crazy. Standing up for the whole time in this race, that must be so hard. But I think like sitting down the whole time for this race will be so hard. So it's perspective.
They can't even walk when they get to the stop.
No.
They crawl out of their boats.
We jump up.
We're fine. It's very interesting, the perspective, because we paddled 700 kilometers, Whitehorse to Dawson, and then today we drove back Dawson to Whitehorse.
6 hours.
I felt way less safe on that highway. It's a dodgy highway. Yeah. There's a lot of trucks and RVs going there, a lot of bumps on that road. I felt way less safe in the car than I did on the river.
Yes, but it was quick.
It was a lot quicker. Yeah. It was 5 hours instead of 71. Yeah. But apart from that, I was like, I never felt unsafe on the river. I felt like I was in the middle of nowhere. I felt those times it was just, I'm totally alone. Yeah. There was a few times where I freaked out and thought like I was hearing people, I was seeing people, like it was a little freaky, especially that first night when I was getting cold and it was dark and the sun just never wanted to come up. That was a little weird, but I never felt unsafe. And really, I never thought I wouldn't make it. It was just, for me, it was a race against the cutoff. So what's the next one we're going to do?
Well, there's so much races like this out there. Not uniquely like this, but interesting races with backstories or longer races. And I'm going to do the 24 not they call it 24-hour 11 city, but it's a non-stop 11 city, which takes about 24 hours roughly,
Yeah.
give or take.
I'll see you at that one.
And then that's I've been doing it many times. So this for me it's like a home race. And
Just a local race.
I'm gonna go to the Muskoka X,
Yeah?
which is
That's straight after, right?
it's straight out weekend after. It's gonna be a hard 3 weeks in September.
September is like ultra month.
Yes,
There's a lot.
You can do 4 every weekend. Oh, sorry, you can do 4 in a month. So every weekend you can do 1.
I think there's actually,
You can go to
there's Alabama is September as well, that new one.
yes.
So we met the guys
Yes.
here. There's a 650 mile, 10-day race through the Alabama wetlands. So September's got 11 cities non-stop, 11 cities 5-day. I think the Alabama race is the same time as the 5-day one. Muskoka is around the same time, Muskoka River X.
Jersey's before that.
Jersey is like I think it's the first day of September, the last day of August. And then when's Great Glen?
And the Great Glen is the week after 11th City and Muskoka.
So in the space, that's 6, in the space of about
4 weeks.
27 days, you're going to have
There's 5 options.
six. If you count 11 cities, there's 2 things.
Yeah.
And the equivalent of, I don't know, 2,500 kilometers.
Yes.
So you pedal 100 kilometers a day.
So and why those ultra races? Like you explain it, it's not just a quick race, but there's so much around it, and there's so, and mostly you go there for a little bit longer, and so you learn a little bit more about the surroundings and the culture, and I love to go to Scotland, for instance, to the Great Glen, because
Yeah, I really want to do that one this year.
I know that I always feel so at home. It's such a rich country,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting race from one side to the other, and yeah, just nice, just something very different.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why we want to really push this whole idea of the Ultra Paddle League, is because I think what's missing in this sport is, like, this sport's never going to be Formula One, right? I think we can finally accept that. We're not really that exciting of a sport, just purely spectator appeal.
Yeah.
But what I think our sport has is stories, and really, really interesting stories. But the average race, it's difficult to get those beyond there's a rivalry between Connor and Boothie or whatever. Like, it's difficult to get a story out of yet another 12-kilometer race. But when you go to a 700-kilometer race, some people may say that's boring because it's so long and slow. But for me, it's the most fascinating race. 11 cities, Uconn, these are probably 2 of the most interesting races in the world. And it's why I want to do the Ultra Paddle League. It's why I want to, it's what's motivating me to stay in this sport, is to help promote these and help share these and help find these stories. Because I look at Uconn and we're making a 40-minute documentary or whatever. It's probably going to be 2 hours in the end. But that we could make 10 movies about just this year's race. There's so many stories. And within the race, there's so many, like, the race has characters within it. And I don't mean people. Like, the Yukon, it has, like, just reading the current of the river is this whole strategic thing. Your preparation, before you even get to the start line, you've done your own race just to get there. The map, like Rourke, like I was calling him Rourke by the end. It was like, once that movie with Tom Hanks, Castaway, where he has Wilson and he goes crazy and paints a face on the volleyball, that was me with the map. Like, I was talking to the map, I was like, come on, Rocky, like, show me where I am. I was turning the page, he's like my best mate, like, in the end, like, I had him in this little doggy bag, I was like really careful not to get him wet. That's a character in the race. And it's, and then you got the support crews. We were very lucky with a very, very good support crew. It's a whole nother element. Like, there's all these characters, all these elements, and when I was out there, I realized that these races have personalities. And it's really difficult to find. I don't want to say shorter races are boring, but it's really difficult to find in shorter races these personalities within the race.
Yeah, we probably need everything, but
I mean, yeah, we can't have a sport that's just 700-kilometer races. Don't get me wrong, but for me personally, this is what motivates me right now.
Yes, it's taxing on the body, but it's enriching the mind.
I mean, it's taxing on the mind at the time, but I think it expands your mind.
Yeah.
Without wanting to go on a spiritual rant and talking about seeing visions, like, I think it expands your mind. Like people talk about taking ayahuasca or going on like acid trips to expand their consciousness, and I think there's actually a lot of validity in that. Not that I've tried it, but for me, like we have natural DMT in our own mind. We can expand, like we can like literally get naturally high. And I think this race is probably the closest I've gotten to saying I was naturally high. So it really is a drug.
Yeah, that's probably the reason why your body quickly says it has to go again.
Yeah.
Because during the race, there's many times when you ask yourself, or somebody will ask you, you would say, no, never do this again. But we caught you yourself already.
I was gonna say,
yesterday.
I accidentally kept saying I was gonna do it next year. We were talking like at the awards lunch the next day. I hadn't even finished 24 hours. And we were talking about things we'd do different. I was like, oh yeah, next year I'm gonna do this. Next year, I was like, you gotta stop saying that. And by today, I'd basically already said, fuck it, let's do it next year. Like, it'll be fun. Yeah. But during the race, I was like, just for the love of God, let me finish. I never want to do this again.
Yes.
And it was funny, a lot of the canoe paddlers came past and like, oh, like we're so impressed with you stand-up paddlers. Have you done this before? I was like, if I'd done this before, I wouldn't be here right now because I'd be smart enough not to do it again. Are you kidding? Of course I haven't done it before. But by the end, and now that we've finished, like now it's been 48 hours since we finished, I'm actually excited for next year. I've already gone over like 100-point checklist of how I could change my gear, what equipment I would change, like different routes I would take on the river, how I'd prepare, how I might actually train instead of just showing up overconfident. But how about you? You coming back?
Yeah, everybody says a 5P challenge nice, so I at least have to try it.
Isn't there a special award now they've got in this race for...
They have a 5,000 kilometer award, which means you have to do it 7 times. But my
what's the award?
No, it's not nothing. It's just
you just get your name on an honor roll.
Yes, it is. It's just
because Chatterjack's got that belt buckle, right, for 5. You must be getting that this year.
No, I didn't go 3? For last year.
Oh, so it's 5 consecutive.
Yes.
Oh, that's harsh.
So.
But I think you've got to do a 5, Pete.
I think so too, and I like to bring my wife here once, at least to experience it and see what it's like.
As a support crew, or would you do it with her in like a 2-man canoe?
No, I think as a support crew, yes.
Would you ever do it in a different craft? Have you been motivated when you see those 2-mans and 4-mans? Like that could be actually interesting.
The weird thing is, I always...
You do outrigger, right? You do 2-man outrigger?
No.
You never done outrigger?
Yeah, twice in my life.
All right, so you never really do sit-down paddling?
No, I've done canoe trips a long time ago.
But not seriously.
And then outrigger 2-man a couple times, 1-man. Not often.
But would you do it this race?
Like in a multiple person.
Yeah, like in one of the voyages or the canoes or kayak.
I would say yes, but I have to see when it gets to it because I like to be depending on myself. I'm very difficult.
1-man canoes.
Yeah, no.
They look a little miserable though.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think so, but there's places in races where it makes way more sense to do a different craft. Yeah.
Well, my last question for you is, who would you like to see do the Yukon race? Throw it out there, like one of the... I got a few names in mind, but we've talked about how, personally, I think it would be very difficult for anyone to beat you in this race, just because it's so mental, and you've already done it 4 times, and even before you started this race, you were already mentally built for this race. There's obviously faster paddlers than you now with all the kids, but I think it'd be really hard for anyone to mentally outmuscle you.
Mentally, it's harder. Physically, it's definitely very possible.
I mean, 11 Cities, we saw the Hasselhoff brothers, the Hasulios.
Yes.
Some of the Tahitians came over. Like, they pushed that to another level physically, but Uconn is just so far beyond that.
Yeah, Uconn is very different. But like I said, it's the time you want to put into it, because the longer the race, the more time you have to put into it physically to be totally physically prepared. So if you're a full professional, it's different than when you also have... back then I was building a house and had kids and had a shop, and so I was not willing and I could not put the time in. And I've never felt bad about it, and I thought it was also nice in time that the Asurio brothers or the people from Tahiti came up and start to win their race too, because for some people it was boring. There was always the same kid or guy was winning the race, and
Yeah.
so I think it's fine. The same with the record, the 24-hour record. It's fine that.
But who do you want to see to the Yukon?
We want to see the Yukon.
You're the starboard team manager. Crack the whip.
Yes, about that.
Get a few of them.
I know you want to say one name here. It's sitting very close next to me right now, but
I'll throw a few people under the bus. Don't
Okay.
worry. But I know definitely, like, if you're a professional and you're paddling through a season, you've got set races you want to do, and they're all like 10 kilometers. Say like a Michael Booth, a classic example. There's no way in hell he's going to do this. It'll destroy your season.
it will. Yes,
But
yes.
there's a lot of paddlers who either want to take a break or who are not taking their racing as seriously or who are at the end of their careers.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to Kelly Margetts, he wants to do this race. He's like, you know,
I saw that post. Kelly Maggett is a person who I think can do well because
he's tough.
I want to say older, and I don't mean in a bad way, but
He's wiser, more mature.
Yes, because we can spread our energy way better. We think about it more, and we do that wiser. I think that's why marathon people are older than sprinters.
And he'd be a good one because people don't realize it with Callie because they look at him and just see this Aussie larrikin that loves a beer and loves a laugh. But he's like OCD in his preparation. He's very meticulous, organized, neat. He bums me out when we travel because he's just so neat. I was like, Callie, just settle down.
He's the right.
So he'd prepare. Like he wouldn't be at Walmart the day before the race like I was.
No.
He'd be prepared. So I think he'd actually be a good candidate for this.
Yeah.
And he said he wants to do it. And I think we're going to throw Trevor Tunnington under the bus as well. He's we're in the car with Trevor today, and I'd almost convinced him to do it because he's a phenomenal paddler. Obviously, he's shown he's world class. He's got a great attitude all the time, and he loves to eat non-stop all day. And I think all those three things would be seriously pushed in this race.
But you have to be totally
especially
convinced.
the food.
Yeah, that's what makes sense.
You have to be totally convinced yourself if you really want to do it, because it takes. You have this mental commitment. You need this mental commitment.
How about some of the? I'd like to see someone like Connor Baxter do it. I think I'd like
a
to
lot
see,
of people we love to see, but
I'd like to see on a personal level. I'd like to see Connor take a year off from his, the elite series, whatever races it is, and do something extreme or something.
We're all friends with Connor, so we know him pretty well. He's almost my neighbor, so I think he will never do it.
He'd never want to do it, I think.
No, that's what I think. Yes,
but he could do it.
Oh yes, a lot of people could do it.
Like he'd be able to do it easily, and I think it would go very close to breaking him because he's never done. He did 11 cities when he was a kid, and he said he's never going back because he hates it.
Right.
But he complains about 20-kilometer races, as a lot of the paddlers do.
It's all relative, and for him too. And it's he can do, but he probably won't. But
I think he's one of those paddlers that's going through a phase where he's like, he was number one for so long. He's clearly not enjoying his paddling as much as he used to. And he's a good friend of all of ours. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he's a little bit over it. And I think this is the kind of race that would reignite some spark. Or he would quit paddling forever because it's so horrible. Either way.
I'm almost afraid of the latter, that's why.
Either way. But I think there's a few paddlers like that. Like there's a lot of paddlers that are like, all right, they just want to go foiling now because they're over the racing. Like there's a lot of people, like the sport's changed a lot in the last few years. And so I think there's a lot of paddlers that would be candidates to do this race. You look at guys like, I think Travis Grant would be a really good one to do this because he can't stand flat water paddling. And this is 700 kilometers of essentially flat water paddling. Although the downstream makes you forget that. Yeah. But he's someone who's very mentally focused.
He's also older and wiser.
He's
a clever paddler.
And he's so good outrigger. He's even better outrigger than he is sup. And he's like, well, one of the world's best in sup. So I think he could do it on anything in this race, and he would do very, very well. And I think he'd actually find it interesting. There's guys like Jamie Mitchell. I'd love to see him come back and do something crazy like this.
And he's surfing big waves. That's pretty exciting. Compared to this, there's a lot less adrenaline.
He's less adrenaline, but I think it's still as much of a mind trip. And there's guys like on the women's side, throw some of your starboard teammates, team riders under the bus. Who you want to see?
On the women's side, well, I'm impressed that Sonny, for instance, wants to do the 11 City this year.
Yeah.
And so that's a start.
Because Seychelles and Yucca had a great battle at 11 cities.
Yeah.
And like you saw someone like...
Sonny is perfect for I think she's perfect for 11 cities.
Yeah.
And this is very different, but it's a route people can go. You can go first to a race like that and then see if that works good for you and you like that kind of style, then continue on to this. You don't have to go straight to this. This is kind of the...
This is the deep end.
Yes.
I was joking with the British guys. I was like, they were on 13-foot inflatables. You could have been on a 14.
Yeah.
And it could have been a hardboard. It was 13 by 32 inflatables. And they were like, yeah, you know, this is kind of our first serious race. We didn't really know what to race on. I'm like, most people do like a 3K open race, guys. You've jumped in the deepest deep end you could possibly do.
They look at the calendar and they think, oh, this is the hardest we can find. We're going to do this first.
So that was, you don't have to build up to it. You could do this as your first race, but it would make sense to gradually build up. Like do the Jersey Round Island.
But they're fit guys. They're military. They train a lot. Mentally they're strong. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, but I'd like to see some women do it, and I think it would be interesting to see. Like, I was blown away by Shauna this year. Like, I think she could easily take down some big names because she was just so mentally strong.
Yes, but mentally strong is also by training.
Yes.
If you know you're trained a lot, you feel confident.
Yeah.
Which makes you, strong in the race.
So next year, if I actually train, I might be slightly better prepared.
You have already so much extra because of this year.
Yeah.
That you know what's coming. And if you train too, then you have both. Yeah.
It was the same with 11 cities. The first year I did 11 cities, you remember, I was so cocky. So I'll just paddle with you for the first day, but I lasted like 2 minutes. Like I was so overconfident, it broke me straight away. But the next, I think I've done that 4 times now. Every year, mentally it gets so much easier. And I think this race, like I'm already excited for next year because I know what I'd do differently. And I think it'd be even more of an adventure when you're prepared.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll see you back here in
I'll see you
Yukon
back here.
territory in 12 months, huh?
I'll see you then.
All right. Well, thanks for having a chat with us, and thank you for all your motivation and support and inspiration. Like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and I know a lot of other paddlers wouldn't be doing these ultra races if it wasn't for you. Like you've really pioneered this entire part of our sport.
Yes, but it's both ways because you support what we do, and it helps us to doing what we do. So it goes all both ways.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure.
Okay.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Alrighty.